Welcome to Finding a Relational Home in Integrative Psychotherapy, which is a podcast created and hosted by the Institute for Relational-Integrative Psychotherapy, Serbia, a training institute dedicated to the development and dissemination of relationally-oriented, developmentally-based integrative psychotherapy. To learn more about the Institute, its programs, and upcoming events, you can visit our website. The link is available in the description of this podcast. The Institute is honored to open this podcast series with a very special first guest, Dr. Richard Erskine, who's the founder of Relationally-Oriented, Developmentally-Based Integrative Psychotherapy, whose work continues to inspire therapists around the world. So welcome, Richard, to a space that we hope is a space of dialogue, learning, and a search for a relational home.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction.
You're welcome. Richard, I'm going to start with probably some questions that you are used to getting, and then I hope that I will get into questions which maybe you're not that much used to getting. And I'll begin with the beginning. Could you take us back to the beginning of your journey and tell us what got you interested in psychotherapy in general?
Well, I didn't start out to be a psychotherapist. I wanted to be an
Okay.
osteopath. My grandmother was an
Okay.
osteopath. And when I applied for the osteopathic school, I discovered that the scholarship I was going to get was a U.S. Army scholarship, and I would have gone directly to Vietnam as a medic.
Oh, wow.
So I quit and I went over to the university, and the only program that was still had an opening in was the Teachers College at Chicago. And I became a special education teacher because I knew that as a special education teacher, I was exempt from being drafted into the Army.
Okay. Mm.
So that's what I did for 4 years. And I had a group of what was called emotionally disturbed and socially maladjusted children. And
Mm.
I fell in love with them. I started going back to school at night, taking night courses in psychology because I didn't think I knew what I was doing,
Mm.
even though I got very good reports from the principal and the other teachers. And so that's how I just sort of gradually moved into the field of psychology and psychotherapy.
Okay. And and then once you got into psychology and psychotherapy, how did it continue?
Well, I had some amazing experiences. After being a elementary school special ed teacher, I was hired by the university to teach child psych,
Okay.
particularly psychology of normal children, general psychology and child psych. And while I was doing that, there had been a murder of in a nursing school, and the survivors needed therapy.
Wow.
And so they hired me because I had already been doing some child therapy. And I think maybe I was the cheapest. For some reason, I don't know why they hired me. Um, and at the same time, I was at the university and shared an office with Bob Neville, who had been Carl Rogers' partner. So I
Mm.
would come in each morning to work and he'd say, how are the nurses? How are your clients? So I would tell him, and that turned into an hour, sometimes an hour and a half of supervision, 4 mornings a week, where I really learned the philosophy and the importance of a non-directive, client-centered therapy that focused on unconditional positive regard. So that was
Mm.
really my important foundation, aside from my academic learning.
Right. Now, as I can see from what you're saying to me, there were different experiences that actually led you into psychotherapy. What would you say were the ideas or even experiences which were actually pivotal for the developmental of your relational orientation?
Certainly, that work with those grieving nurses
Hmm.
uh, and the constant supervision from Bob Neville that focused on being there, presence, not making something happen, but being with them as they express themselves. That foundation was there. Now I lost some of that basic foundation along the way as I did other training in Gestalt therapy and in transactional analysis and in behavioral therapy. Uh, the focus became more on outcome and on intellectual understanding and changing behavior. And so I lost some of that early relational perspective for a number of years. Fortunately, my
Mm.
clients, in confronting me, brought me back to that more relational perspective. By confronting me, I was saying
Mm.
that they'd say, like, Richard, this isn't working, or you're wanting me to change, but you're not really with me in this process.
Mm. I find that so fascinating, the fact that it's actually at the very beginning you were in the ideas of what basically became your relational work, but it was the learning in between that took you away from a relational perspective, and then
Was
your clients brought you back, which is
when we first published Beyond Empathy, a
mm,
reviewer who I don't know, she's a professor of psychology, um, said, Erskine has out Rogers, meaning that Beyond Empathy is that next step to what
yeah.
Carl Rogers had published.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Would you say that's a huge compliment?
Oh, yes.
Um,
Except with you now, because it seemed like too much bragging.
oh, no, no, absolutely not. You often actually talk about the importance of, in your work, of fulfilling developmental needs in therapy. When was the first time that you became aware that they were key to the healing process?
Okay, there's a problem with your question because it is not
Right.
what I said.
Okay.
Uh, In psychotherapy, we have to make a distinction. If we're talking about relational needs that are right now, here between
Mm,
you and me, in the present with two adults,
mm,
or needs developmentally of a child which were never satisfied. Uh,
right.
if it's needs now, and I'm working with somebody who is an adult, I have two possibilities. I can be responsive to those needs, meaning I can identify it and talk about it and its significance, or I can respond to the need. All right. So let's say somebody is calling me and asking me for advice, and I say, well, I can see how you really need advice. You need somebody to tell you what to do, but I'm probably not that person. So I'm
Mm,
acknowledging the need. I'm responding to
mm,
it, but I'm not trying to satisfy it. Or I can go
mm,
ahead and give them my opinion and therefore possibly satisfying the need.
mm,
I- When I'm dealing with somebody who's talking about needs that were not met in childhood, I can respond to them. I can help them realize what the need was, how significant that need is in their life, and how they compensated when those needs were not being met. But there's nothing I
mm,
can do in the now that takes away the
mm,
discomfort of that need not being met.
mm,
But then I can look at how do they compensate when those needs weren't met? And how is that compensation interrupting today's needs from being met?
mm, mm.
And I think your question reflects many people's misunderstanding, and they think that the job as a therapist is to fill up the empty vessel.
Yeah. Would you say that it's actually more of to see that the vessel is empty how it got empty
and how
and
it got
how it's, mm,
and how it maybe is kept from filling up.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. You also talk a lot about relational contact. And how would you say that your understanding of it changed throughout the years?
Well, it's probably continually changing because each person, I think, is telling me something new.
Yeah.
This
Mm,
morning, I was working with a client, and he was talking about his abusive mother, and I reflected back his role in that and how he was compliant with her. And he immediately said, "You're not with me, Richard."
mm,
He said, "When you start talking about my role, you lose contact with me."
mm,
And I realized at that moment, he's telling me that my comment is way premature. He needed my empathy for the little boy who was mistreated by his mother before we started focusing on taking self-responsibility. And
mm,
so even today, I had that kind of relational confrontation from the client who's teaching me how to be therapeutic with him.
mm. Wow, that's quite impressive to actually hear. And I think for us as I would still call myself a young therapist, but when we actually hear someone who has so much experience tell us that this morning that they've learned something more,
Yeah.
I think it makes it's I feel an easiness to kind of sit and kind of go, okay, so it's okay that I don't know, and there's so much more I can learn. Even Richard's learning still.
Oh, Maria, I think we all have to do in what periodically what I call a relational inquiry. And that
Mm,
is whenever we do something that's a little controversial or we don't know how it's working, go to the back to the client, maybe 20 minutes later, maybe the next session, and say, when I said to you XYZ, what
mm,
happened between us in that process?
mm,
And then let them influence me. So my best teachers in psychotherapy, the really significant ones, have been my clients.
mm, mm. But I'm also very sure that you have taught many therapists who have learned um, your way of working. When you observe them, these young therapists in training as IP therapist, what brings you the most joy?
Watching them work in a relaxed way without any self-criticism of the quality of the work that they are doing.
Mm,
Self-discernment, being able to know, oh, I'm misattuned, and
mm,
being able to correct it without any internal condemnation.
mm. Wow, that also sounds like something that takes a really long time to learn.
Well, it means that when I'm doing supervision, I'm
Yeah.
often engaging also in some personal therapy for the therapist because so many young therapists are so internally critical
Yeah.
of what they have done. So it's almost impossible to do a really good quality supervision without dealing with the internal conflict in the therapist that stops them from appreciating and evaluating and constructively criticizing their own work.
Again, that means a lot to hear because I'm quite aware of how I think we are very, very critical of ourselves, and it's nice to know that we can get to a point where we're less critical.
Yeah, well, see, many of the psychotherapists I work with
Yeah.
got to where they are by criticizing themselves. They criticized themselves in school, so they studied. They criticized themselves, so they stayed up late at night and did the papers they had to do. And
It's
so
a very
that
useful
criticism
tool.
originally was useful, but by the
Mm,
time they are in practice, it's no longer useful. Yeah.
yeah. Um, when you look at the term relational home, how do you understand it today, both professionally and personally?
I can quote a couple of different therapists, a couple of different clients that have said the
Okay.
same thing. When I had my office in New York City, they would come in, they would have been on the bus or on the subway, and they'd walk in and go, "Oh, I'm in the oasis."
Mm,
That having it was that sense of a sigh and plopping themselves down on the sofa and the moment of quietness that we created together that said that there was a safe, comfortable place.
mm,
Um, so I'm thinking that, when your institute is referred to as a relational home, that the
mm,
psychotherapists who come and do training at your institute are going to feel that same sense of comforting oasis,
mm,
that
mm,
place to belong, the place where they can say anything that's on their mind and not be humiliated because of it.
mm. Yeah. I think that's extremely important, and I really do hope that I think every institute that does work in relational way needs to really try to have that setting. And I don't think that setting, I think going through our trainings as therapists, we've experienced something very, very different in the
Mhm.
sense of humiliation and being criticized and actually, so I really do hope we do make a relational home in the Institute. Richard, if you were to take describe the core of your therapeutic model, what would it be?
The unconditional positive regard,
Mm,
Martin Buber describes as a I thou relationship, and the
mm,
concept of presence, really being there with the person, absolutely focused on them, decentered from ourself, and yet stimulated by what the client says to use all of our own experience, our own knowledge, the movies we like, the music we know, the theory that we rely on as a resource library behind me. It's like I'm sitting in the library and I reach back and I grab one of these books and I say, "Oh, what do you do with this angry client?" Then I go back
mm,
and I'm back with them. So I'm shifting back and forth, attending to them constantly attending, and then attending to my own affect or my own thoughts back to them. So it's
mm,
that shuttle back and forth, but making my own self insignificant and focusing on their experience.
mm, mm.
It's hard to put it into words, that internal shuffle. Uh,
Yeah, but I get what you're talking about.
if
It's
if we ignore ourselves completely,
mm,
we lose the advantage of our countertransference,
mm,
of knowing our resonance and that what I call responsive countertransference. We
yeah,
also lose the knowledge of potential reactive countertransference, which is our own unfinished business, which we need to take to supervision and psychotherapy.
mm,
But if we don't also focus on ourselves, we don't have that resonating or responsive countertransference where I start feeling in me what that client might have needed from a caring parent.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
Um, in the new book that just came out this last month, Essays on Integrative Psychotherapy, I have a chapter in there describing both kinds of countertransference, reactive and responsive. And then the importance of the psychotherapist being with the client, really being present.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, I understand exactly what you're talking about, and it's so interesting to sort of watch. Um, I think you say it's hard to understand, but I think you describe it really clearly, the shift of sort of being in contact with yourself and then being in contact with the client, and it's constantly in some sort of motion, even though we're sitting in a chair or a couch or wherever we're sitting. Yeah.
So right now, when you're
Um,
talking, I'm not thinking,
yeah.
I'm just listening.
Yeah.
But at some
Yeah.
point, what you're saying is going to stimulate me to think.
Yeah. 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 A great illustration. Thank you. You mentioned already in one of my first questions that this morning you learned something new about relational contact with your clients. So I assume that I could possibly know the answer to this next question. But were there any moments in therapy where you did not know what to say? And then how did you handle those situations?
Oh, that's all the time,
Hmm.
all the time. I'm still seeing a lot of people in the workshops I do, the 5 day experiential training workshops. Um, Often people sit down in front of me and they start telling me a story about some internal conflict, and I don't know what to say. Now, one of the things I say to myself is, it's too soon. I don't have enough information yet. Two, um, just listen because they need an active, seriously interested other. Uh, the other thing I might say to myself is don't speak yet because you don't know enough. Um, and then probably the fourth thing that's most important is a lot of phenomenological inquiry. So they're talking, I don't really know what's going on. And I might say to them, what's happening in your body right now? Or what are you feeling? Or what does that remind you of? Um, or what would you like me to really understand about you?
Hmm.
Those kinds of questions take me past my own stuck spot and make it
Hmm.
more, again, relational and involved with each other.
Hmm. I really like that when I listen to you speak and when I read articles and books that you wrote, you do very often mention this question, and it's meant a lot in my work, where you would actually ask quite directly the client, what do you need from me at this point? Um,
Yeah,
and
keeping
for me, that's such a powerful question, where at the same time you're telling the client that, they have a certain power. They're still in some sort of control of their own lives, and I am not the expert, even though I could possibly guide you through a difficult situation. And it's a humbling question, isn't it?
Yes, keeping in mind that often they may not be able to identify what it is they need. But the
Mm.
question is an invitation for them to make an impact on me,
Yeah,
influence me. Come on, tell me. Uh,
yeah.
the other thing that I try to do, and one of the things I learned from my Gestalt training with Isidore Fromm, who would say, teach your clients to say no to you from the very beginning. So I might early second, third session say to somebody, now we had an interesting session today. Is there anything you'd like me to have done differently?
Hmm.
Or,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow, very
we had
powerful.
we had a very interesting discussion. Was there anything you didn't like?
Hmm.
So I'm inviting them to make an impact on me, or I'm inviting them to express their choice, particularly when you get kids who were abused. Uh,
Hmm.
their free choice was stolen from them.
Mm.
So it's important in therapy to bring in opportunities for choice. I think that's one of the things that made Eric Berne's development of contracts so important,
Mm.
because they gave a client a sense of choice in determining what is the purpose and outcome of our psychotherapy.
Yeah. Yeah. What it leads me into is the next question, which again, I probably can tell what the answer is going to be, but I want to hear the elaboration. When was the last time you made a mistake in therapy, and what did you learn from that?
This morning, this morning, and the mistake is that when someone is caught up in that internal turmoil, it's
Mm.
not a time to help them think about taking self-responsibility,
Mm.
that he needed much more empathy from me. And that empathy, although I have done it before, seems to be forgotten session to session, and I have to continue to be empathetic. In
Mm.
fact, I wish you were here right now listening to this apology. You know,
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And now that we've talked about this mistake, and you've also told me about this shift, this walk from being in contact with the client and then sort of reaching out to that library behind you, would you say that that looks like an inner battle between the therapist who knows, right? And then the therapist who feels? And what does that battle look like for you? Is there a battle?
looks more like a tango,
Okay.
a dance, a dance with some wonderful steps in between.
Hmm.
A dance that has to follow the rhythm that the client is setting.
Yeah.
Uh, so I wouldn't conceptualize it as a battle, but it is that rhythm of moving back and forth. And I called it a tango because you have these long, slow steps in a tango, very different than a
Hmm.
jitterbug.
Yeah.
Um, but it's that movement back and forth that yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's what comes with experience. There is a real difference when I do observations in my 5-day workshops and supervision groups.
Yeah.
Big difference between the young therapist and the mature therapist. That mature
Mm.
therapist knows how to take those long tango strides.
Mm. Yeah. We tend to want to hurry up a little bit. We're more jitterbuggy, right? Okay. When was the
Jitterbug's a little old-fashioned now. I don't know what they call. I don't know what the young people call today's dances. I'll have to ask my
today's, yeah.
13-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I would say I'm pretty old school on the nude kind of dances, but it's definitely like a fast dance, right? And one that doesn't keep you in place.
Well, tango can be fast too.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Though I have to say there's a question that keeps me asking. I did ask what was the battle between the therapist who knows and the person who feels. And you said it's like a tango, and you gave wonderful descriptions of it. But in a tango, someone has to lead. And who leads? The therapist who knows or the person that feels?
Wow, I've never conceptualized it like that. I think it's a shared experience.
Mm,
Often I sit back and I say to myself, don't lead, just
yeah.
follow. Let's see where this is going. That there are times, particularly when I start thinking now, I need to be working developmentally, that I
Mm,
lead. Many clients don't want to be led into those early memories,
yeah.
and they won't go there. They'll act it out. but they won't go there intentionally. And I need to say to somebody who is talking about being hurt by her friend's conversation, and what was it like for you when you were 13 years old in school with the other girls?
Mm.
Or what was it like for you at the dinner table when you were 6 years of age? At that moment, I am really taking the lead so that when we are going to work developmentally, the therapist is almost always in the
Always
lead,
leading.
leading the client back to the original experience, taking the transferential transactions,
Mm.
all right, and identifying what aids those may be an enactment of, and
Yeah.
inquiring that allows the client to tell the story that they wouldn't spontaneously tell.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. So it's again, it's an exchange of sometimes you take the lead and sometimes you let others lead you in that process.
Yeah,
Mm.
most of the time I'll sit there, somebody will come and start to work with me, and I will sit there quietly for 10 minutes listening.
Mm.
Another client
Mm.
comes, and the moment they sit down, I say, and they do this, and I say, do that gesture again. No,
Mm.
what gesture? Come on, do that gesture again. All right, keep going. Now press your hand there. Just stay with what you're feeling. Keep going. And
Mm.
take them right in deeper into the experience by picking up on that first gesture. At that moment, I've
Mm.
taken the lead right from the beginning.
Mm.
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 And what a
Yeah.
contrast if you saw client A and client B.
Yeah.
One, I sit for 10 minutes almost silent, listening. The other one, I intervene immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that description. It paints a really nice picture of what you mean. Yeah. Were there times, again, I think I know your answer, but I want to hear the elaboration. Were there times when you felt that a client moved you deeply, maybe even changed you?
Oh, I have wept with some clients about
Mm.
the abuse. I have
Mm.
angrily put their father in the empty chair and shout at
Mm.
their father, "You can't do this to your little boy." So
Mm.
I have been angry. I have been wept. I have just walked home feeling depressed. I
Mm.
have worried about people. Are they really going to hurt themselves? Are they really going to stay in that awful marriage?
Yeah.
So that's part of a wonderful countertransference process that I think is not fully appreciated, and that it
Mm.
has to do with being willing to love our clients
Mm.
without becoming a rescuer.
Mm.
Uh,
I'm tempted to ask, and how do you do that? But I understand that that's
I
probably
have
a
an
whole
answer.
book.
The answer is
Oh.
very carefully, very carefully, with a good deal of thought, uh, ideally with consultation with a good supervisor or one psychotherapist.
You need to be held by others in that moment to be able to do that.
Well, I had a
That's how I.
long-term psychoanalysis
Mm.
that went on at 2 p.m. most days of
Okay.
the week.
All
So I
right.
would be in my office and I would start at 9 some mornings if I had emergencies at 8. And I
Mm.
would then walk just a short distance to my psychoanalyst office. I'd be on the couch for 15 minutes and I'd walk back to work and go back to work. But
Mm.
much of that time, I'd come in after a busy morning or thinking about the clients who will come this afternoon. So a
Yeah.
good deal of the time, at least in the beginning of the session, would be focused on my reaction to my clients.
Mm.
So I learned a lot about appreciating the countertransference. One, and if it's reactive, a movement into what I needed to discover and express, or two, an appreciation for my resonance and responsiveness with the client and what my feelings were telling me about where the direction of the therapy needed to go.
Mm. That sits wonderfully into my next question is how do you recognize the moment when you are in true contact?
I don't really know.
Mm.
Uh, Maybe I assume that it's all not always 100% pure,
Mm.
that I am constantly approaching real contact or full
Okay.
contact.
Mm.
That's always an approachment of it. And then the contact only lasts for a moment.
Mm.
And then there's a new contact moment and a new contact moment. Um,
Mm.
in Gestalt therapy, we have a concept that the self only exists for a moment. And then there's another self and another self. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
Mm.
so nobody's ever asked me that question.
Mm.
I, I don't have more of an answer.
But thank you so much for saying two things. One is I don't know, and thank you for that honesty. I mean, and I think that that means that will mean a lot to others listening to this. That and
I,
maybe there isn't an answer to that question. Who knows? You know?
with a zoom camera between us, which is
Yeah.
a bit of a separation, it feels to
Yeah.
me like you and I are really connected now,
Mm. Mm.
with one thing missing, and that is
Yeah.
this is one-sided. It's all about me, and I'm not inquiring about you, but that's not our contract today.
That's
But
okay.
I'm left with
It,
an intriguing questions of, and
yeah.
who are you, Marija?
Okay. Well, you're putting me on the spot, but it's like, it's like in therapy, right? Yeah, we sometimes know so much more about our clients, so we'll keep it like that for now.
All right, that's our contract.
Okay. Um, how do you deal with a client that challenges you then? And not just professionally, but also emotionally.
Do you have an example? Because you're asking a hypothetical question, and if I
Yes.
the
Do I
hypothetical
have?
questions are always more difficult to answer.
Okay, so I would say a client who is challenging you professionally would probably be a client who is going outside of what you know as a therapist, right? And a client who is challenging you emotionally is probably a client who's hitting your red buttons or going outside your, I don't know, capacities, emotional.
Well,
Does
all
that
right,
make
give
more
you an
sense?
example,
Yeah.
with one caveat. In this book, I also wrote about the story of Wayne, an
Hmm.
alcoholic.
Hmm.
But generally, I did not take alcoholics into treatment.
Okay.
All right. I did have in treatment a number of cocaine addicts, but I didn't know they were cocaine addicts until the
They
treatment had
disclosed. Mm.
exposed it. But the alcoholics is pretty obvious early in the treatment. And I've never had the patience to
Mm.
work with them. The character I wrote about, who I called Wayne, he came in because he was about to lose another job because of his alcoholism. He had been on a 3-day bender. He had fallen down, smashed his face. Um, and he told me about his alcoholism. And I said to him right away, I can't treat you unless you go to AA for 90 meetings in 90 days.
Mm.
That's a basic AA formula.
Yeah.
And he did it. That was what was amazing. So I had a
Mm.
co-therapist, but I would
Right.
not have treated him if he hadn't made that agreement.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
And that's because I grew up with an alcoholic stepfather.
Mm.
And I had spent much of my young life and adolescence trying to stop the alcoholism. And I knew there's too much countertransference involved. Now, that's the kind of
Mm.
countertransference that is not useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. So
Um,
thank you. So let me just check if I understood you correctly. So the that client challenged you both professionally and emotionally. Professionally, and you sort of dealt with it by kind of saying, well, you need to go into a program where someone's going to deal with you in a way that I can't right now. And then the emotional challenge was the fact that the countertransference that would have happened between the two of you would for you have been a lot.
Somebody else was dealing with the alcoholic man.
Mm,
I could deal with the wounded boy. And Wayne had
right.
been physically badly abused, sexually abused by his father, um,
Mm,
given his first shot of whiskey when he was 5.
mm,
There was a lot of that history that I could attend to because I was not dealing with the alcoholism, except I
yeah,
would check, you know,
yeah,
did
yeah,
you go to a meeting every day?
yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
great. That's very, very useful. Thank you. To sort of look at it in asking for a co-therapist, as you said, it's very, very useful. Richard, have you ever doubted your therapeutic model or even therapy itself?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Um, I've been through several changes. Um, I was very admiring of Fritz Perls' short, bombastic, get right to it kind of way of working, which I sometimes make use of.
mm,
Um, but with the clients in my office, some of them just didn't make, uh, particularly uh, clients who were fragmented inside, who had
mm,
different parts of their personality. Uh, then I was very involved in the TRIA world and at one point looking at the dynamics of games and how the script is enacted moment by moment. And it was much more dynamic. Um, Therapist telling the client what was going on kind of therapy.
mm,
And again, from feedback from clients, I gradually changed. Um, and not looking at the dynamics, let's say, of a game or the dynamics of the script, but more looking at the internal experience. What was the phenomenological experience of the person and
mm,
how their decisions that they had made in their life and the conclusions they came to seemed to them the best possible choice in the moment, given
mm,
the limited information that they had and the stress they
mm,
were under. So there's been a constant change in how I work.
mm, mm. And how did you learn to trust the process and yourself?
Some of it by talking to my analysts many times. Some of it just by making mistakes and feeling terrible about it and
Mm,
saying to myself, don't do that anymore. Um, some of it by doing relational inquiry and asking the client, what was it like for you when I did A, B, or C? Uh, Maybe some of it's just maturing with time and experience.
Mm.
See, you're asking a specific question of something that emerges rather than happens.
Yeah. 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 Mm. I can understand they can be difficult, yes. I mean the questions. I am aware. When you were a young
But I like your
therapist.
questions.
Okay, good. So when you were a young therapist, what did you want someone to teach you the most, but you did not have anyone to ask?
Well, what I wanted to know the most was
Yeah.
how to do fast, efficient therapy. I love the old PA idea of the cowboy therapist who rides into town and he takes his lasso and he ties up the bad guys and he shoots down the rackets in the games and puts them all in the OK corral and rides out of town and into the sunset, maybe with the maiden by his side.
Don't we all
And
want to
it,
be that
and it's
therapist?
all done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, that was sort of the metaphor of the TA therapist of the early 1970s. And that really impressed me for a while. It was so different than that client-centered approach that I had come from.
Yeah.
And it was so fitting with the Gestalt therapy that I watched Fritz Perls do. Now, very different than the Gestalt therapy I learned in Laura Pearl's training group for 4 years. Um,
Mm.
she was a very much more relational in her approach to Gestalt therapy. So that was sort of the exciting image I had for a while. And it took me a long time and a lot of mistakes to outgrow
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Many of my important teachers were the group of what we called at the time multiple personality or dissociative identity clients that I started
Mm.
having in the late 70s and throughout the 80s. When I first moved to New York, I had no practice, so I went around to all the various therapists I knew and I said, I'll take anybody that you don't want. And so I got a lot of borderline clients. Mostly women, couple borderline
Right.
men, mostly women. But after a few years of that being mostly exclusive my practice, I discovered that some of these women who had been diagnosed by my colleagues as borderline were actually multiple personality.
Right.
Um,
Oh, wow. Mm.
and in fact, one of my clients wrote a book called Shatter that is the
Mm.
story of her treatment with me, although my name is not in the book.
Right.
Um, so that in working with those kinds of clients, I realized how important it was to be exquisitely sensitive to each little kind of part inside of them. Uh,
Mm.
and that some of my more dramatic approaches to psychotherapy, such as uh, using an empty chair or explaining the script system to them, just didn't seem to work because I do that, they'd flip to some other part inside.
Yeah.
So I was forced to come back and be much more attuned to all the different fragmentations.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mm.
that group of patients taught me a lot. Um,
Mm.
the same
Mm.
thing that when I discovered how to work with schizoid clients, which I never had any training from anybody on.
Right.
I got trained by my clients who were schizoid of
Yeah.
seeing how they were withdrawing. And I remember the very first one that I tried this with, she would constantly be withdrawing. And I was like, come on, stay in contact with me, be here with me, don't go away. Then I realized, the Gestalt concept of you had contact externally, contact internally. And I thought to myself, maybe she's not withdrawing from me. Maybe she's trying to make internal contact. So when I would see her close her eyes and go quiet, I started saying, now just close your eyes, go into that quiet place. And then she would start to talk from that internal place about her loneliness and her despair, um, about the importance of silence and how that was her only refuge. And she started teaching me about the two women, the social woman who was very social and very glib and had good external skills, but was a lost soul inside. So both of those groups of clients taught me a lot.
Yeah. So when you had no one to go and ask, it was you actually turned to your clients. They had answers.
When I had my first clearly multiple personality client,
Yeah.
I went around New York seeking supervision. I went to two psychiatrists and a well-known psychoanalyst. And they all said, this is your TA theory. You think about child ego states and therefore you're creating them with your client. And none of them knew how to work with clients. There was only one book by Ralph Ellison called Minds in Many Pieces. I read that and it described my client, but there was nothing helpful there about how to treat them. So I started just treating each part that arose like it was a regressed client. And eventually getting those various parts to talk to each other. If you can find the book that's been out of print for many years called Shatter.
Right. Shattered.
Shatter. By
Oh,
Nancy
Shatter.
Clark.
Okay.
It's a first-hand account of my client who took her notes and recorded her session, and then a professional author helped her write the book.
That's so interesting.
The work and what I learned about schizoid process is in a book called Withdrawal, Silence, Loneliness that came out last year.
Yes. And we have it translated here in Serbia as well. So that's great.
I was so lucky for that.
Exactly. Richard, is there a question about therapy that you have posed to yourself most throughout the years and it still seems open for you? You still haven't completely answered it.
Probably many questions. At the moment, nothing comes to mind. A classic one that Freud asked himself is, when is it terminable? When does one stop with a client?
Yeah.
Certainly, if you have a behavioral outcome contract, you stop when you reach the end of that contract or when the behavior has changed. If you're dealing with an in-depth psychotherapy, it's a matter of dealing with all the hurts and losses and misattunements that one has accumulated over the years and the conclusions and survival reactions and the decisions they have made. And that's a long-term, 5, 7 year process for most people. When you've got extreme neglect and abuse, there may be no end to the therapy. What's important is the ongoing relationship. I've had such long-term clients, and basically what they say is that I stay in therapy because I have more quality to life by staying in therapy. And those are the kinds of clients I found it very difficult to leave behind when I left New York and closed my practice. Mm.
Yeah. So for you, that's when it was time to terminate, when you had to leave.
Oh, that's the only time I've ever terminated with a client
Mm,
where
mm,
I have initiated the termination. That's not true. In group, I
yeah.
have several times asked people to stop attending group and spend their time and money coming to individual therapy because the
Mm,
group was too intense and too just emotionally disruptive. And I
mm,
didn't have time in group to give them that undivided attention.
yeah. Yeah.
But I never have asked anybody to terminate individual therapy. And I've
Yeah.
had many clients who I think terminated too soon, particularly clients who started then getting in touch with that withdrawn, lonely part, which is so
Mm,
painful in its loss of its absence of connection, that
yes.
they would terminate therapy, even though when I thought they shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Richard, do you think like I could see now that there's probably therapists out there who might criticize or say that you're too soft or that you are um I don't know what else they would say, but the fact that you've not terminated with anyone, you have not initiated it, I'm sure there's people who would probably criticize that. What would your answer be to them?
Well, that's what I did.
And you'd be fine with being too soft.
I don't know what, I certainly know what's too hard.
Yeah,
Uh, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'd rather make a mistake on being too gentle, too
yeah,
respectful, too soft,
yeah.
than demanding, controlling, uh,
Mm,
rigid.
mm,
Um,
mm. Yeah.
mm.
Thank you for that. That actually deeply resonates with me. I agree. Um, it's like when you get when you're a mother and you get this advice that you shouldn't love your children too much. And I've always wondered what is too much of love. So in the sense of what is too much of to being soft, I mean,
But Maria, I don't think the clients in my workshops now, and the few
mm,
that I see here, in
yeah,
would say that I'm soft.
mm,
I think they would all have stories about when I pushed them, when I
mm,
have been confrontive, when I have been not as gentle as they wanted me to be.
mm.
I'm sure they would all have stories of a different kind of Richard than the one you just described.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I'm just saying I believe you absolutely. I'm just saying that sometimes if a therapist does not initiate termination, some people would then describe that as being too soft.
Uh,
And
Most of my clients have terminated because they didn't want to spend the money anymore or the time.
yeah, yeah.
You know, they're no longer feeling the crisis that they came in with. They
Yeah,
came in with a crisis expecting to be done
yeah.
in a few months. They stayed for the next year because they were intrigued. Then they
Mm,
stayed for the next couple of years because it was really, they could see the significance of the deep developmental work. And
mm.
then they get to the point of, oh, it's time and money. I'd rather go to Hawaii for vacation. Um,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
many people terminated that way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that and I have people asking me this question quite a lot, and I'd love to hear your answer. Would you say that a therapist can truly help someone else if they themselves are not complete or completely healed?
Sure, they can help them
Mm,
to the degree they can help them make behavioral changes.
mm,
They can help them understand things. Um, they might even be able to do some regressive work with some techniques. Uh, but then there's probably always a limitation of blind spots that they cannot go because they haven't gone there themselves. Um, I find that particularly true when therapists repeatedly, though they understand child developmental concepts, fail to go to the wounded child, and they constantly keep talking to the person about their bad job situation.
Yeah.
And fail to realize that what's getting enacted transferentially on the workplace is a story about their childhood. So therapists who haven't dealt with their own childhood losses and neglect and
Yeah.
criticism and trauma don't take their clients to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. Understand that. Can we, when you speak about healing through the relationship, and we've just mentioned these therapists who've not gone to certain places themselves, do you think that a therapist can be healed through the relationship that they have in therapy with their clients? Does it work the other way around?
I think so.
Mm,
It's a two-way street.
yeah.
It's a co-constructed process. Lindsay Stewart, in one of the early issues of the International Journal of Integrative Psychotherapy, wrote a wonderful little article called The Relational Needs of the Psychotherapist,
Mm.
talking about the 8 relational needs that I described in the book Beyond Empathy, but how in his practicing therapy, he was having each of those needs responded to by his clients.
Mm.
In that regard, I think there is a real healing.
Chilling.
Uh,
Yeah.
I know that I come out of the end of the day of some of my 5-day workshops, having spent 8 hours really attending to people, and yet I can
Mm.
sometimes feel so good and at peace with myself because of that process. So I suppose that's moment by moment kind of healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other times
Is
I come
there?
out worried about how did I miss that person? What went wrong that I wasn't
Yeah.
connected? And then I struggle with it for a while. And then I usually
Yeah.
need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is therapy more of an art or a science? And can it, like, is it something that we can learn?
Ah, now you let me make another commercial. I wrote a book called Integrative Psychotherapy, The Art and Science of Relationship. The
So you would say
science,
they're both. Hmm.
the science is that we take the art and we go backwards.
Mm.
All right. Um, for probably 10,000 years, human beings have been making vessels out of clay.
Mm.
By taking clay, they shaped it, they made it into bowls and pottery and things like that. But it has only been since the advent of modern science that we can look at what is the consistency of the clay, what are the mineral contents that fire best, and what are the temperature ranges that determine the best kind of porcelain versus china versus ceramic. Um, and do you fire with one kind of glaze or another? We are doing that quite scientifically, and I'm sure that every glassmaker in that knows the science of it. Uh,
Mm.
but the artistry came first. And the same
Mm.
thing with the books that I've written. They've almost all been written from studying audio transcripts of the therapy and then
Mm.
looking backwards. What did we do there that worked? What did we do there that didn't work? And how can we explain that? Particularly in the book Integrative Psychotherapy in Action, which is the first book that Janet Morrison and I did together. We spent couple hundred hours listening to audio tapes and trying to distinguish what was the significant interventions. And that our notes from that, which in writing the book, Integrative Psychotherapy in Action, the notes from that became the basis for uh, Beyond Empathy.
Yeah. Okay. So is it something that we can learn then?
Well,
Therapy.
I have always been doing research. I haven't done it in
Yeah.
terms of a parametric statistical model, but I've
Mm.
always been searching what is it that we do that works and what is it we do that doesn't work, and then how can we break that down into component parts.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that we can learn it. Makes
Mm.
sense. Um, we're coming close to the end, and I have two questions that I really, really like to pose. And the first one I think is kind of fun, but I also think we can learn a lot from it. If you were to go back to your younger self at the beginning of your career, and you are about to walk into your first therapy session ever, what would you whisper to that young Richard in his ear if you could?
Don't try to make something happen.
Uh,
Be with her. Don't make something happen. Um, that first adult client was a woman in her 50s who
mm,
was quite depressed.
mm,
And I kept trying to give her pep talks
yeah.
and tell her how good things were and how she should look on the bright side of things. Uh, I was probably more like some clergy who give encouraging advice uh,
Yeah.
than a patient, understanding psychotherapist who helps the person articulate their unspoken internal process. So I would tell
Mm,
him, don't make something happen. Not now, not in the first session, maybe not in the
yeah.
first 4 sessions, because you don't know her yet.
Yeah.
When I say you don't know her, meaning I don't know her internal her.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's a very, I think that's something that I have to say that I'm still learning to do. It's such a simple thing, but it really takes time to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot is you have to trust the process
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
of two people sharing an intimate discovery together.
Yeah. Mm, true.
And what was that second question?
And the second question is, since I've asked you so many questions, and I'm glad that some of them really made you think, I could really see the brain working. Um,
And
what
unfortunately, with the
is
Zoom, you don't get to see our eyes because when I'm looking at you on the screen, I'm not looking up at the camera.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. I
yeah.
know. What is the one thing that you have always wanted someone to ask you about psychotherapy? And until now, no one has asked you that question.
Probably the hardest is what's in it for you.
Oh,
No one's ever asked me so directly.
yeah.
No, my psychoanalyst probably asked it
Okay.
so, not as bluntly as I've just said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
What's in it for you in the sense of what do you get out of being a therapist?
yeah,
Mm,
I know that one of the things that I get is a sense of loving of my clients, a sense of purpose. It's really become a devotion in my life. Um,
mm,
I'm 84. I don't have to keep working. And yet I have a whole series of workshops and seminars planned this year. Um, I actually prefer doing psychotherapy than I do teaching or supervision. Um, there's a sense, I guess, fulfillment. That's such a generic kind of word. Um, a sense of purpose that I have accomplished and contribute to the welfare of this world. Um, there's a meaning to my life. Uh,
Yeah.
those are all a bunch of things that might sound like cliches. Um, I don't know how to say it any other way.
But what I really like is that those are things that people, the more we meet people and especially clients in therapy, I mean, those are the things that they try to answer for themselves. What is what is the meaning of life? What is their purpose here? And it's so wonderful to know that you have found that in your job.
One of my daughters, who is also a trained therapist, but not working now as a therapist, um, came to a conference a few years ago and said, "Dad, you are so well loved."
Mm.
And I thought, wow, uh, she can see it and I feel it. I don't see it, but I feel it in the sense of just being calm with myself inside and knowing that I've contributed to some people's lives.
Yeah.
There's a old Jewish scholar named Hillel
Yeah.
who said, if you save one life, you have saved the whole world. Do you know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You saved one life, you save the whole world. And that sometimes has been my approach, particularly when I think I don't know what I'm doing, I'm lost, and people don't seem to connect. And I think, well, but maybe I helped one person.
Yeah. Yeah. Richard, thank you so much for your time. I wanna close it here because I think it's such a beautiful spot to do that. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure and it's been a deep honor, and I have learned so much. And even though it's been through Zoom, I could absolutely sense the warmth and the love that you actually emanate when people are in communication with you. So thank you
What a
so
wonderful
much.
compliment. Thank you, Maria. Enjoy the rest
Okay.
of your evening.
Thank you. You
Goodbye for
too.
now.
Bye.